But I think maybe the first way to start this is to maybe illustrate the question we're going to talk about, which is Alain, like all great CEOs, enjoys a fine lunch. And you can actually witness it yourself by typing in Chez Karim, I think, which is Alain's favorite restaurant in northern Paris, into Google Street View. And you'll see a picture of Alain standing outside. Whether this says more about Alain or Street View is probably up for debate. But I think it sort of highlights the fundamental question here, which is, Alain, to what extent should people be prepared to let people into their private lives to use free services such as Google or Facebook?
Well, I think people know the basic economics of the web. You have free services on one side, and you enjoy Google and Facebook and all the media on the web. And on the other side, you get ads. So this is a deal which is about clear. What's not clear is what's going on behind the curtain. And it seems, and that's a major concern, people don't know what's happening behind the curtain. And when they find out that they're tracked and they leave data and that these data are used, they kind of, wow, I didn't know about that, and that's a problem. And that's the point of my book. I mean, the question is, how can we try and explain what we're doing? Every time I try to explain what my company is doing to a friend, they say, ah, you are Big Brother.
And do you feel that the big players in this business are being open enough with the public about how they go about doing their business?
Well, I think we have two problems. We need to have this discussion about privacy. It's major. I think it's very important for the sustainability of the business, our whole business. On the one side, you have people who don't like the internet, basically, and who says, give me my freedom, this is killing me, this is taking my privacy, I hate it. And on the other side, you have two strong voices. One is Facebook, who basically says, privacy, are you serious? This is not a subject for a modern man. This is a subject for the past. And you have Google, who, through Eric Schmidt, is giving some strange positions, which is, if you don't want people to know what you're doing on the internet, just don't do it. If you're not happy with what you've done in the past, change name. If you don't want people to know where you live, or you don't want to see your house on Street View, move. So well, by the way, you still have Street View.
So people's fears about privacy on the internet are justified, you think?
Yeah, I think that's obviously a serious ground. I mean, if you want to solve this problem in any way, you need to explain what you're doing. You need to go and explain people. As long as they don't know what a cookie is, it's very difficult to tell them that they have control about their privacy.
So how do you do that? What is this, a question of transparency? Is it a question of regulation? How do you encourage people who actors on the web to divulge this kind of information with people using these services?
Well, I think we need to educate. This is number one. We need to educate, and we need to explain what we're doing so that people are not afraid. I mean, what we're doing, for example, with our own advertising format, we put a little W, people click, and we say, hi, this is Weborama, we're collecting info, this is what we're doing with it, this is the benefit we have from this is the benefit you have from this. If you're not happy, you can go out. And we have like 10 million clicks and only 2,000 opt-outs. So it means when you explain to people, they let you do.
So why do you think actors like Google or Facebook are not explaining this like you are?
Well, that's one of the major questions for me. One of the major questions, because they're the loud voices. They're the ones that are more listened to. I mean, so that's a question to them, not to me. I'd like to know.
Right, I see. And do you think there should be some sort of regulation involved in this? Does there need to be a government body overseeing this business?
Well, it's precisely because I think it's not a regulation issue. We absolutely need soft law, which means our own regulation, and it means that the major player must be around the table. If they're not, I mean, it's not Weborama who's going to change the world.
Interesting. And you're a big fan of this right to be forgotten, this idea that you can sort of erase your past online, and if you do something regrettable at the age of 15, which is then photographed and put on Facebook, you can then have a right to claim that photo back. Why are you a fan of this, and is it at all workable, do you think?
Okay, I'm taking the risk to sound very French.
Yeah, massively.
No, but I think this is, it's obvious that you don't have to I mean, if you do something very bad, you have the right. This has the right to be forgotten. Okay. So whatever you're doing with your friends, or you're smoking a joint when you're 15, I mean, this should not follow you all your life. And whenever you want to raise it, you should be able to do it. It's a basic principle. Sometimes principles are good. It's motivating to find technical solutions. I know it's technically difficult, but we've solved much more difficult problems. Okay, when money is at stake, we are able to solve the problems. So we should be able to solve this, and I think it's important.
I see, but the argument would be, I think in the future, I would hope that people who are employing people and they check their Facebook profile and they look through their history, they kind of expect them to have these dark secrets in their past. They expect them to be going out and getting drunk because they're normal human beings. Don't you think that there's going to be a fundamental change in perception towards how people are?
Well, Max, there's a lot of things you're expected to do and that you don't want to be on Facebook.
Yeah. Such as? Fill me in, Alain.
Well, I don't want to sound more French than I am already.
So what are you going to do about this? I mean, you're a fairly major player in this market. You want more transparency. Are you going to try and dialogue with the big players, Google and so forth, to try and find a solution to become more transparent, or are you just going to wait until and hope someone finds a...
Well, we're going to do as much as we can. I mean, the fact that I'm publishing this book is kind of, for me, was important because I wanted to take some time off and think about the problem. And I'm convinced now that we need to solve this problem if you want a sustainable internet economy. I'm hoping many people from the industry will read this book and will join the cause.
And are you positive about the future in terms of...
Yeah, I'm quite positive. I'm quite positive because there's a balance. People... they know things are happening, and as soon as you explain to them, and when you follow such certain principles, such as anonymity, for example, they're very reassured and they go along. I'm very convinced this is going to work.
Interesting. And I don't know if anybody from Google or YouTube would like to... There, come on. Spill the beans. Carlo's being quiet. Would you like to say something? Come here. Come on.
It's happening.
I think first of all, with size comes responsibility. So I think if Google tends to speak a bit less on those topics at the moment, it's because we have to be very cautious to what we say, to what it implies, and to what the consequences are. Clearly, I think the concept of privacy is evolving with society. Young people have a different view on that than older people. And on one side, on another extent, we all need advertising to become more behavioral. Because if you go to behavioral advertising, the value of an advertisement increases for 5, 6, 7, 9, 10 times. So in the interest of the publishers, you want that to move. Finding the ways to do it while protecting the people requires some care. We have only one sentence, I think, a sort of mantra we are trying to use. If you are interested in what people do on the web, but not what people are, somehow we can avoid to risk to breach privacy too much. But, you know.
What do you think of what Alain's been saying? I mean, do you think his idea of putting a little W on the... I mean, yeah. I mean, Alain's idea is if you put a little W basically on the ad, people can then click on the W.
You can put a G.
Or a G or whatever you want. You do? Oh, really? Who are you? Yeah. Yeah, but my grandmother doesn't know how to do that.
Well, I think there is...
No.
not only on the ads, but we also allow to manage your privacy and manage your situation. If you decide to, first of all, you have to somehow, when you're on Google, you have to recognize yourself. You identify yourself, and from that moment, you can manage what you accept and what you don't accept. You can decide which cookies you have or you don't have, and you can manage the system properly. Clearly, if you don't make yourself recognized, we can't do that. People start to know it, and this will evolve. Over time, situation will change. I don't think he said anything that's scandal or that Google shouldn't accept to discuss at all. So I'm sorry, but I don't totally disagree. So maybe that's the problem. You
disagree. Well, he's been quite critical about Google. He said that you've basically refrained from...
No, I'm critical about the communication. Right. I think that when Eric Schmidt is saying what he's saying, it does nothing to promote the debate.
But Alain, a joke is a joke. What Eric Schmidt said in June about you have to change your identity was a joke because it was pressed during communications. It wasn't what Eric thinks and what the policy of Google is on privacy. The fact of saying, however, that you can opt out is important. The example I gave on Facebook is simply saying people can opt out if they want. They have that freedom, and we are developing technologies to allow this more and more. This is an important part of it. Now, to say you can change your identity was a joke. It happened as a joke. This joke became a serious sentence. It's going around the world. We are continuing to talk about it, but it was a joke. I mean,
but now he wants us to move from
he
our
doesn't
place.
want you to move. He is pressed at conferences by people who continue to ask questions, and sometimes he makes a joke like any human being. Okay, it was only a joke, and I know if Eric was there, he would tell you the same thing. It was a joke. Eric told me, so I'm sure of what I'm saying here. It was just a joke. We have a very serious policy about it, and we are being very cautious in innovating on advertising, because we want to make sure that what we do is understood, and the developments we do on advertising bring value to the total of the chain. One of the changes Google is doing is that we are trying to become a better partner. And becoming a better partner meaning speaking a bit less and making sure we're understood.
And to what extent do both of you fear regulation in the sense of an opt-in? I mean, we're talking now that some people in the EU are talking about opting into having pop-up ads appear on the site when you click on it. Is this something that you genuinely fear will happen, that you have to say, yes, I agree to have these cookies installed every time you arrive on a website?
It depends on what you're talking about. If you want people to opt in a technology, it has to be a push technology. Otherwise, it's extremely difficult to make it work. It just doesn't work in a pull system. So if it's a push technology, you can refuse or give it. But why don't you let Alain?
Thank you.
We'll finish that.
By the way, that is, I'll use this mic, Carlo Asanzo, Carlo Dazzo Biondo, who is the head of Google Southern Europe and Middle East Africa. Okay, just so everybody knows.
Excellent. And does anybody else have any
We do have a
points
question in the
that
audience.
they would like to,
Yeah, to add on to the that you just suggested about opt-in, I mean, right now we're talking, the only paradigm that seems to be out there is sneaking information to get to ads in front of users. What about the opt-in scenario? If you would ask me, I would love more targeted ads. I keep getting ads for lesbian cruises. Like, you're not doing a good job. I would much rather receive ads for the things that I really love, that I really care about, and I'm happy to tell you exactly what I like. I like a certain kind of shoes, I like certain kind of bags, there's certain things that I like. I'm willing to give you that information if I can get something relevant in return. So what about that as another paradigm for us to consider?
No, this is certainly a model that's gonna develop. I believe in this. I believe in the user expressing and participating to the system, putting data in himself in order to pull the convenient ads. Absolutely, I agree with that.
And I mean, do you feel that that's something that a lot of people feel when you see your customers? Does anybody ever come back to you saying, look, I feel unfairly targeted, or I don't want these ads being pushed onto my computer screen every time I click on this website?
Well, there's different approaches to behavioral targeting. One is really to work on aggregate data. So we take data from various different sources and we infer what the behavior is going to be. There's another one, which is, I know that you went to such site and you looked at this particular ad, and I'm going to send you the same product 1 to 1,000 times until something happens. And this is something that many users feel a bit violent.
Right. And what are you doing about that? Is that like
well, we're capping. We're strictly limiting the number of such ads that we're putting, even if it's less efficient.
Fantastic. And does anybody else have any other points they'd like to raise? I think there's someone at the back there, over there. I think right at the back.
There, okay, hang on.
Well, it's blinding.
It is kind of blinding. Sorry.
Don't worry. So my question is about, my name is Nomi Key-Konst, and I'm from Alliance Hollywood Hands on Democracy in Los Angeles. So we work with political campaigns and political leaders, and one of the major problems that we have in the United States and probably internationally is the spread of misinformation, not just through, for example, last week there was a little bit of misinformation spread by Michelle Bachmann, who's a congresswoman, and it was spread to national television about President Obama's trip to India costing $200 million a day. That's a simple example of the misinformation spread about individuals. Now, if you localize that, there are campaigns all over the United States and probably internationally where misinformation is spread through blogs and Twitter and whatever it is. Using your model or your basis, your argument, how do you fight this misinformation being spread on the privacy level? Do I need to further explain?
Well, I'm not an enforcer against privacy, so I wouldn't know how to do that. I mean, our technology is advertising, and what I'm trying to do is to make sure that people that we are tracking know what we're doing. So I couldn't answer your question.
And Anna, you always stress that all the information you collect remains strictly anonymous. To what extent, is there any value in having people's names at all? I mean, in knowing my name, for instance, if you were targeting an ad at me?
Well, except if you're working on databases with the name at the center of it and you're aggregating various databases, this can make sense, but we can really develop very targeted and highly and efficiently targeted advertising without the name. And we're not using any personal data, and I think that's something we should follow.
Excellent. Is there anybody else?
Yes, John Gaunt from Media Dojo. First, technically speaking, Michelle Bachmann is a dipshit. Second part, to what extent do you think this is a generational issue on privacy? I mean, I've got the stereotypic 15-year-old daughter who is a very shrewd information and privacy trader. To what extent do you think that certain things are going to stick and other things are going to change based on generational changes?
Well, it seems that this generational thing has always been right. I mean, if you go 20 years behind, a 15-year-old would not care about his privacy. It's true today. The difference is whatever thing is doing and saying and writing is staying. So that's the problem.
Hello, Geneviève Petit from CB Web in Paris. The thing about privacy is that I studied politics 20 years ago, and my professor said the definition of totalitarianism is when there's no limit between private and public life. And now there's someone, Mark Zuckerberg, who says that private life doesn't exist anymore. And I'm very concerned about this subject because I think it's all about democracy.
Well, I agree 100%. Privacy is a new notion. I mean, relatively new. It's 200 years ago when people are moving from the countryside to the cities, and it's developing. And it was theorized for the first time in the US around three important things: secrecy, quiet, the possibility to be quiet, and autonomy. And we need that one way or the other, and we need that when we are on the net as well. So I agree 100%. I mean, the country that do not care at all about privacy, because when I'm often told, I mean, go to China, there's no problem about privacy. This is typically French or German. It's probably linked also to the political situation.
Okay. We got one here. Okay. So Benjamin Fass from Google, but not relevant to the question. I was in Moscow a couple of months ago, and when you stop at a traffic light in Moscow, there's people selling you CD-ROMs with basically the information of all Russians people, how much they pay in tax, who they are, where they live, etc. Nobody buys the CD-ROM. It's like nobody cares because it's available. And so I totally understand, and thank you for helping educate people on privacy. My question is more, what are we trying to educate on? You know, it's a very hard subject to talk upon. I think the question raises that. It's a indefinite subject. Some people are for privacy, against privacy. What is privacy? Why should we defend privacy? Is that a good thing, a bad thing? At one point we get lost. I'd like to get your sense on where are we getting at? How do you see this evolving in the next few years?
Well, what I think is important is a fair contract with the user. I mean, I think it should be that he knows what's happening behind the curtain, so that when we have a discussion, which is going to happen, we can talk. I mean, try and talk to someone who says, you're eating my privacy. No, but you can control. I mean, how can I control? Go to your settings and navigate without traces and cancel your cookies. I mean, they think you're a Martian. So we need to be able to have the same lexicon and talk about the subject and solve it with the two parts on the table.
Yeah, Nick Wiggin from Ericsson. I think coming back to the question from Google, it's all about trust, and you know that's the fundamental element that is associated with data management in our eyes. It's people have information about consumers, and it's how that information is managed that is the fundamental element. And the most important thing to bear in mind is consumer, putting the consumer in control of that information. And you know, there is a debate which we're fully aware of in the European Parliament at the moment, which is addressing, you know, the latest revision of the 1995 Privacy Directive, and everybody has a vested interest and is invited to contribute to that discussion. And we think that it's an important topic, and I think you know, I congratulate you on bringing that to the attention of this audience.
Any comment about that?
No.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. Big Brother in America anyway, and I think George Orwell's version, was not actually about commercial privacy at all. It was about official privacy. And do you, in the book, what do you say? I mean, how do you deal with that? I mean, it's a quite different subject, isn't it?
Well, that's where I started the whole story from. I started by reading again 1994. And basically, we have the same tools. You have this telescreen, and you have the new speak, the new language, which, I mean, we're talking about words, we're talking about the telescreen. Major differences. I mean, Big Brother was doing that to manipulate the people and to impoverish the language in order to better control. So it was completely totalitarian. But when you look at that, I mean, the internet, I mean, they look at you, but you can talk to them. Okay, there's a two-way. And it's an open door to culture, to leisure, to education. So that's the major difference from the beginning.
Well, but to put it very bluntly, I mean, technology is famous for kind of predicting things that some things take longer and other things happen much sooner. I mean, is 1984 actually happening? I mean, you know, it didn't happen in 1984, clearly. Is it just going to happen in 2014 instead?
No, it's not happening. It looks a lot like it, but it's not happening. It's very different, and I believe this is not gonna happen. And well, if we're talking strictly about privacy, the Patriot Act is much more worrisome than whatever we're doing over the internet.
But if everybody's lives, I'll put it this way, if everybody's living an increasing percentage of their lives in a digitally accessible, in theory, you know, right now it's flying around, it might be on a Orange network or somebody else's network, but it's up there somewhere. It's in a Google cloud. It's there. And formerly it was not there. It was formerly in their closet or under their bed or somewhere like that. Now suddenly it's out there. Is that, at some point, does that mean, is there a change? That mean, again, in theory, there's legal protections. Nobody's supposed to do this. You can't go there. Google promises we're not going to do this. Everybody makes lots of promises. But the potential is there, isn't it?
That's precisely why I think that privacy is an issue. I mean, you cannot just consider that this is going to go. It's not. I mean, this is a major concern for some people. It's growing and growing for some other. Some want to know what's happening. We need to educate.
Okay, we're going to take two more. One here, one there.
Yeah, well, let's do it. I'm for. I'm for.
Okay, so Gerard Leonhardt from the Futures Agency. I think the problem that we're looking at is sort of like having the cake and eat it. I mean, I think if you're going to take the benefit of a networked society and that we're all actually doing this with each other, you can't not take the risk of what we have on the other end, which is that we may be actually doing too much of it, right? It's like saying when you go to a dinner party, you want to go back home and delete the conversation that you had at the table. You know, that's not possible. So I think basically we need to figure out risk management for this, not so much putting barriers, but creating a mechanism of managing the power that we have, right? So I think the discussion is going a little bit in one direction in terms of the flow of things. I think we could do better by managing the risk rather than just putting up walls.
Well, this is typically something that exists with Facebook, because whenever Facebook is going too far with their advertising policy, immediately you have a kind of collective intelligence at work, and that's stopping the thing. And they're very, very quick to respond to that. So if any one of us doesn't know precisely what's happening behind the curtain, on the whole, we know. And that's how it works. And I think it's very interesting to follow what's happening with Facebook, because they're pushing to the limit. They see what the reaction of the users is, and they come back and they push again. And that's the way we're going to find the point where we have the balance.
Hi, Emma Barnett from The Telegraph. What's your position on handing over data to the police? Because this has happened a few times in the UK and different areas. When the police demand information, several large profile tech companies have handed it over.
That's why we put the anonymous data on top of our priority. I mean, if the police comes in, we can hand the cookies, but you have no way to collect to connect the profile to any individual. And for us, when we're working and thinking about this, that's the way we think. If the police comes in, what can we give them? Nothing.
So I would just remind us that before there was the GPS-aware mobile phone, there was the credit card. And the credit card tracked all kinds of behavior, much of it location-specific. And people who look at, are trying to find credit patterns have told me there are 200 different sets of 7 variables, which, if you give them to their technology, can be disambiguated even if they are said to be anonymous. So number one, I don't think media is really in the forefront of this issue. I think finance is. But then the question is, when you put the two of them together, which seems inevitable, is there any turning it back? And what can be done following your thought of what we need is options for remediation, because I think Scott McNeely was kind of right when he said get over it. The battle is lost. There's so much data from payment systems as well as media. What are some specific things that can be done to help people protect themselves, or to protect people?
Well, that's again comes to the question of education. I mean, people, they can manage their privacy settings on the internet. They cannot control everything, but there's a lot they can do, and they don't know they can do.
You can't control it on your credit card. If you want to, you can get off the grid, but you can't control the payment data.
Right, but this again is not the issue I'm most concerned with. I agree completely with you. I mean, I met recently a taxi driver. He didn't have a portable phone. He didn't have a bank account. He was completely paranoid about this question. There's nothing I can answer. I mean, this is going to happen. This is some of the difficulties we have ahead, and we'll have to sort out.
Okay, should we do one more? Okay, we'll do one more. A quick question.
This is happening with when Tesco analyzes the shopping and says you're gonna pay your insurance for car less because you're buying not alcohol but drink juice, fruit juice. It's happening.
Well, what happened recently, you had this company, Form in the UK, they were buying data from telcos. And immediately, and that's the beauty of it, is that the web is giving the tools to really react. And there was lots of reaction on the web. There was a website called Batform, and a lot of people came in, and they had to abort. And they stopped, and it didn't happen. So the web is also giving us the possibility to react collectively and to fight back.
Okay, Max, do you want to have a last question?
Yeah, one last question, I think is, what happens when one day, God forbid, a Weborama or a Google goes bankrupt, what happens to all the data there? Is it sort of collateral? Is it bought up by a state? Is it bought by a bank? Can anybody do whatever they want with all those addresses and date of birth and last shopping point?
Well, lots of states will go bankrupt before Google.
That's true.
So, but yeah, that's a big question, and that's also why. I mean, I think that when you're really, I mean, in the case of Weborama, we go bankrupt. We have this database. 2 months later, it's not worth anything because the cookies are dead, the profiles are not evolving. Everything is anonymous, so you cannot do anything with it.
Okay, interesting, fantastic. Well, thank you very much.
Gentlemen.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, and thanks for a big hand for our guys.